Welcome to the Mysteries of the Burrows. I am Ted Stonewall, and these are my adventures. So obtain a spot of tea and cozy up and enjoy.
The mystery of the innocent accused, when the market smelled like cabbage and commerce. I was there for flour, which sounds foolish for a miller, but Prudence Oatcake's bread flour had a texture I couldn't match with my stones, and pride only goes so far when you want decent bread. Mabel Stonewell's stall anchored the market square's north corner, vegetables arranged with the precision of a military campaign. Carrots stood at attention. Potatoes formed orderly ranks. Even the cabbages seemed intimidated into uniformity. I was examining onions, 3 for a copper, reasonable enough, when the shouting started.
"Thief! I've caught a thief!"
And the voice carried across the square with the particular resonance of someone who wanted everyone to hear. I knew that voice. Barnaby Thistledown, one of the Burrows constables, appointed last spring through family connections rather than any discernible competence. I set down my onions and looked. Barnaby was dragging a young Burrow folk by the collar across the square, his round face flushed with triumph. The young fellow was protesting loudly, feet scrambling for purchase on the cobblestones.
"Let go of me! I haven't done anything!" "That's what they all say. Caught him red-handed, I did. Suspicious behavior. Very suspicious."
And the crowd murmured. Some folk drifted closer, drawn by the prospect of entertainment. Market day could be dull, and a public arrest added spice to vegetable shopping. I moved closer too, but not for entertainment. The accused was young, early 20s maybe, with the kind of energetic build that suggested he'd rather run than walk anywhere. His clothes were good quality but dusty, marked with sweat stains at the collar and under the arms. His hands were empty, no stolen goods, no bulging pockets, just clenched fists and an expression of furious indignation. But it was the flour that caught my eye, not just any flour. The distinct pale gold of Prudence Oatcake's stone-ground wheat, dusted across his left shoulder and the side of his neck. The same shade that marked her stall's bags, and on his right forearm, smudged against the fabric, was the unmistakable orange-brown of carrot soil. Fresh, still damp. Guilty people looked scared, or they looked calculating, planning their next lie. This young fellow looked angry. Wronged.
"I was helping. Ask anyone. I was moving crates for the vendors." "A likely story. You Rivermark folk think you can come here and help yourselves to whatever you fancy."
Rivermark. That explained the accent, slight but noticeable, the rounded vowels of folk from across the water. The young man was from Marcus Deepbrook's territory, outsider territory to most Burrows folk.
"My uncle is Marcus Deepbrook. Send word to him. He'll tell you." "Your uncle's authority means nothing in the Burrows. Here, I'm the law."
As I looked around the square, several vendors were watching with uncomfortable expressions, the look of folk who knew something but didn't want to get involved. Mabel Stonewall caught my eye and shook her head slightly, a warning or a comment on the situation. Maybe both. Barnaby hauled his prisoner toward the constable's office, still announcing his triumph to anyone who'd listen. The crowd began to disperse, returning to their shopping, the excitement over. I should have gone back to my onions. Instead, I followed. Not because I cared particularly about the young man's plight, but because the numbers didn't balance. Flour dust and carrot soil told a story Barnaby was too incompetent to read, and watching an innocent man get ground up in bureaucratic machinery offended my sense of order. The constable's office sat at the edge of the market square, a small stone building with a wooden door that needed new hinges. Inside it smelled like old paper and pipeweed, the cheap kind that left a sour note in the air. Barnaby had deposited his prisoner on a wooden bench and was now pacing importantly, thumbs hooked in his belt.
"Now then, let's have your name. For the record." "Felix Riverrun, as I've told you 3 times already." "Felix Riverrun, of Rivermark." Yes, my uncle is..." I don't care who your uncle is. You were observed behaving suspiciously in the market, handling merchandise, looking around nervously. Classic thief behavior.
I was helping move crates. The vendors asked me to help. It's called being useful.
Convenient excuse.
And I knocked on the door frame. Both of them looked up.
Mr. Stonewall, come to see justice in action?
Come to ask a few questions, if you don't mind.
By all means. The more witnesses to proper procedure, the better.
His smile had teeth in it, the look of a man who thought having an audience made him right. I stepped inside. Felix Riverrun watched me with wary hope, the look of someone who'd take any ally at this point.
What exactly did he steal?
What?
You announced you'd caught a thief. What did he steal?
Well, he was about to steal. I apprehended him before he could complete the act.
So he didn't actually take anything.
Suspicious behavior is enough. Any experienced constable knows that prevention is better than cure.
What suspicious behavior, specifically?
Moving crates without authorization. Handling merchandise he hadn't purchased, looking around nervously, loitering. And he's from Rivermark. Everyone knows those folk have different standards about property.
And there it was, the real accusation hiding under the official one.
Moving crates, for vendors who asked him to move crates.
So he claims.
I turned to Felix.
Tell me exactly what you were doing in the market today.
Felix sat up straighter, recognizing someone who might actually listen.
My uncle sent me, Marcus Deepbrook. He wanted me to help the Burrows vendors as a goodwill gesture. We've got trade agreements, and he thought some practical assistance would strengthen relations. I was moving heavy crates for anyone who needed help.
Which vendors?
Mabel Stonewall, Gilbert Greenacre, Prudence Oatcake. I moved 6 crates for Mrs. Oatcake alone. She's got a bad back.
And they can confirm this?
Of course they can. I was working for them all morning.
I studied him more carefully now. The flour dust on his shoulder matched Prudence's distinctive grind. The carrot soil on his arm was fresh, still damp from watering. His shirt showed sweat patterns consistent with lifting heavy weights repeatedly. The kind of exertion you'd expect from moving 30-pound crates, not from casually browsing stalls while planning theft.
Your shirt's soaked through. How many crates did you move total?
15 maybe? I lost count.
I looked at Barnaby.
A thief scouting targets doesn't work himself into exhaustion moving merchandise around. That's the opposite of staying inconspicuous.
Now see here, Stonewall, I know my business. I've been a constable for 8 months now, and I can spot criminal behavior when I see it.
8 months of jumping at shadows and harassing outsiders. The mill wheel of justice, grinding nothing but innocence into dust.
Have you asked any of these vendors to verify his story?
I don't need verification. I saw what I saw.
And you saw a young Burrow folk moving crates in a market, and assumed he was stealing because he's from Rivermark.
And he looked suspicious.
He looked like someone doing manual labor. There's a difference.
Barnaby drew himself up, and I saw something dangerous flash in his eyes. Not intelligence. Barnaby would never have that. But wounded pride combined with authority. Like father's temper when you questioned his methods, irrational, vindictive, permanent.
I don't have to justify my methods to a miller. If you'll excuse me, I have paperwork to complete, and I'll remember this conversation.
Whilst the threat hung in the air like flour dust before it settles.
Ian, I'll be back with verification.
And I left before Barnaby could make his threat explicit. Mabel Stonewall was rearranging her cabbages when I returned to her stall. She looked up as I approached, and something in her expression suggested she'd been expecting me.
The Rivermark boy. You want to know about him.
Was he helping you this morning?
Of course he was. Moved 3 crates of turnips, 30 pounds each, and didn't complain once. Strong lad. Polite. His uncle sent him to help the market vendors, and that's exactly what he did.
Why didn't you speak up when Barnaby arrested him?
And contradict a constable in public? That's trouble I don't need. Barnaby's a fool, but he's a fool with authority and family connections. Cross him and suddenly your stall permit needs reviewing, or the health inspector finds violations that weren't there last week. I've got a business to run.
I understood. Didn't like it, but understood. Fear kept people silent more effectively than loyalty ever could.
Would you be willing to tell Barnaby what you've told me?
If you're there too, yes. That boy doesn't deserve to spend a night in a cell for helping people. Someone ought to say so. Just don't expect me to do it alone. Barnaby remembers slights.
When I found Gilbert Greenacre at his vegetable cart, selling beans to a young mother with 2 children clinging to her skirts, I waited until the transaction was complete.
The Riverrun boy.
Well, Gilbert nodded heavily.
Helped me unload my cart this morning. Moved crates of carrots, 4 of them, heavy ones. Wouldn't take a penny for it. And now Barnaby's got him locked up for theft. Theft of what, I'd like to know. The boy's hands were empty.
You saw him working?
Nick saw him working harder than Barnaby's worked in 8 months of being a constable. But I've got a wife and 3 children. I can't afford to make enemies of the law such as it is, especially not when the law has cousins on the township council.
Would you tell Barnaby the truth if I'm there to back you up?
And Gilbert considered.
Aye, I would. The boy deserves that much. But Stonewall, be careful. Barnaby's family has reach. Making a fool of him publicly. That has consequences.
Well, Prudence Oatcake was less diplomatic.
That pompous, puffed-up fool. Felix moved 6 crates for me. 6! Do you know what that would have cost me in hired labor, and Barnaby arrests him for helping? That boy was covered in my flour because he hoisted bags for an hour straight, which is more honest work than Barnaby's done all year.
He says Felix looked suspicious.
Well, he looked like a young man doing honest work, which is more than Barnaby's ever done. I'll tell him to his face if I have to. That boy did nothing wrong, and if Barnaby wants to cause trouble over it, let him try. I've been baking bread in this market for 30 years. My customers know my character.
My 3 witnesses, 3 respected vendors, 3 confirmations that Felix Riverrun was exactly what he claimed to be. A young man helping market sellers, not robbing them. The evidence balanced. The numbers made sense. Logic demanded a specific conclusion, regardless of anyone's feelings about Rivermark folk. I walked back to the constable's office with their words in my pocket like grain weights, measured, verified, irrefutable. The Barnaby was eating a meat pie when I returned, crumbs scattered across his paperwork. Felix sat on the bench, staring at the wall with the resigned patience of someone who'd given up expecting justice.
I've spoken with the vendors.
Thus Barnaby looked up, annoyed at the interruption to his meal.
And?
Well, Mabel Stonewall confirms Felix was moving crates for her this morning. 3 crates of turnips, 30 pounds each. Gilbert Greenacre confirms the same. 4 crates of carrots, heavy ones. Prudence Oatcake says he moved 6 crates for her alone and wouldn't accept payment. The flour dust on his shoulder matches her stone-ground wheat. The carrot soil on his arm is from Gilbert's fresh-watered stock.
They could be lying.
Yeah, all 3 of them? About the same thing? In the same way? They all identified him by name. Felix Riverrun, the nephew of Marcus Deepbrook, who was sent specifically to help Burrows vendors as a gesture of goodwill.
Well, that may be...
And you arrested an innocent man for doing exactly what he said he was doing.
I was being cautious. You can't be too careful with strangers, especially Rivermark folk. They don't share our values about property.
And you mean they're outsiders, so you assume the worst. You have no evidence of any theft, no stolen goods, no victims claiming missing property. You arrested someone for moving crates in a market while being from Rivermark.
Felix stood up slowly, watching Barnaby's face crumble.
There may have been a misunderstanding.
There was yours.
Fine. He can go. But I was only doing my duty. Better to investigate and be wrong than to let a thief escape.
He wasn't a thief. He was a helper. And you might want to learn the difference before you arrest someone else for looking suspicious.
Felix walked past me, rubbing his wrists where Barnaby had gripped him. At the door, he paused.
Why, my uncle will hear about this.
Your uncle's authority means nothing here.
But the bluster had gone out of him. What remained was something harder, colder. The look of a man filing away grudges for future use.
Maybe not, but his memory is excellent, thank you. I don't know your name.
Ted Stonewall, the miller.
Thank you, Mr. Stonewall, for actually checking.
And he left. I followed, leaving Barnaby alone with his half-eaten pie and his wounded pride. I'd made an enemy today, Incompetent authority was dangerous enough on its own. Incompetent authority with wounded pride and family connections was worse. But the numbers had balanced. The evidence had been clear. Logic had demanded a specific course of action. What I felt about it was irrelevant. But outside, the market had returned to its normal rhythms. Vendors calling prices, customers haggling, children weaving between stalls. No one paid particular attention to Felix emerging from the constable's office. Yesterday's spectacle was already forgotten.
Let me pay you, my uncle would insist. He doesn't like debts.
There's no debt.
You just saved me from spending a night in a cell for helping people. That's worth something.
I didn't do it for money.
He stopped, hand still on the purse.
Then why?
But I considered the question, thought about Barnaby's smug certainty, about Felix's indignant anger, about how easy it was to destroy someone with assumptions and authority.
Because the evidence proved your innocence. The flour dust, the carrot soil, the sweat patterns. 3 vendors confirmed the same story. The facts required a specific conclusion.
You noticed all that?
I'm a miller. I notice flour. And when the numbers don't balance, I check the weights. Same principle.
Felix studied me with an expression I couldn't quite read.
Most people would say they did it because it was the right thing to do.
Most people think with their hearts. I prefer evidence.
Well, thank you anyway, Mr. Stonewall. I won't forget this.
And I shook it. His grip was firm, calloused from the morning's work. The kind of honest wear you got from real labor.
Stay out of trouble.
He grinned, young and slightly reckless.
I'll try.
But I watched him head toward the bridge to Rivermark, his step lighter than it had been an hour ago. Then I went back to the market to finish my shopping. I still needed onions. The vendors would remember this. They'd see me as the man who stood up to a constable, who defended an outsider when everyone else stayed silent. They'd be wrong, of course. I hadn't stood up for anything. I'd simply corrected an error in the system, like adjusting a millstone that was grinding crooked. But let them think what they wanted. Reputation had practical value, even if the reasoning behind it was flawed. And the next morning, I was counting grain sacks when a shadow fell across the mill doorway. Marcus Deepbrook stood there, well-dressed, but not ostentatiously so, with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. His face was weathered, his eyes sharp. He looked like a man who solved problems efficiently and didn't tolerate fools.
Mr. Stonewall?
That's me.
Marcus Deepbrook. My nephew told me what happened yesterday, and what you did about it.
I just checked the facts. Anyone could have done the same.
Anyone could have, no one did.
And he stepped inside when I gestured. The mill office was cramped, dusty, nothing like whatever fine rooms he occupied in Rivermark. He didn't seem to notice or care.
Felix said you refused payment.
I don't take money for proving someone innocent. Doesn't feel right.
Marcus nodded as if this confirmed something he'd suspected.
In Rivermark, we verify before we accuse. Seems the Burrows could use more of that approach.
Some could. Constable Thornhill runs a fair office. Barnaby Thistledown. He's enthusiastic.
That's a diplomatic way to put it. Felix is young and sometimes foolish, but he's not a thief. If you hadn't intervened, his reputation would have been damaged. Our trade relationships would have suffered. You prevented more trouble than you know.
I just followed the evidence.
That's exactly what I mean. If you ever need anything from Rivermark, send word. We remember our friends.
I took the card. Good paper, quality printing. The kind of thing wealthy folk use to mark their territories.
I'll keep it in mind.
Marcus nodded once, turned, and left. No lingering, no elaborate farewells. A man who valued efficiency. I tucked the card into my ledger, between the pages tracking income and expenses. Then I went back to counting grain sacks. 32, same as always. A connection to power and resources I'd never had before. Possibly useful. Probably nothing would come of it, but the potential was there. Like an extra millstone kept in storage. You might never need it, but when you did, you'd be glad you had it. That afternoon, Barnaby Thistledown passed me on the lane outside the Badger's den. His face tightened when he saw me.
Stonewall,
I'm Barnaby.
Not he stopped, blocking my path. Not threatening exactly, just asserting himself.
You made me look a fool yesterday.
No, I could have pointed out that he'd managed that himself. I didn't.
I won't forget it. Think you're clever, showing me up in front of everyone, making me release a prisoner.
I wasn't trying to show you up. I was trying to correct an error.
He was suspicious.
He was working. The evidence proved it.
Me Barnaby's jaw worked.
I know my business, Stonewall. I've been trained for this. I've got family on the township council. I've got authority you'll never have.
Then maybe you should learn to use it properly.
But his face went red. For a moment I thought he might take a swing at me. Then he stepped aside, letting me pass.
Watch yourself. That's all I'm saying. Accidents happen. Permits get lost. Inspections find violations. You understand me?
I understood perfectly. Barnaby Thistledown, nursing a grudge. Incompetent, yes. But incompetent with family connections and wounded pride. Like a millstone with a crack in it, still functional but unstable. Dangerous if the stress hit wrong. I walked on without responding. Some warnings weren't worth acknowledging, but I filed it away. Barnaby Thistledown, enemy. Something to watch for in the future. The numbers always balanced eventually, one way or another. A week passed. The mill wheel turned. Grain became flour. Life continued. I went to market on high day, same as usual. Needed vegetables, maybe some of Prudence's bread if she had any left. The first thing I noticed was Mabel Stonewall's nod. Not the polite acknowledgement she gave regular customers. Something different. Respect, maybe. Recognition. She caught my eye across the crowded square and inclined her head deliberately before returning to her cabbages. At Gilbert Greenacre's cart, I selected potatoes and carrots. When I reached for my coin purse, he waved it away.
On the house today.
I can pay.
I know you can, but today you don't have to, for what you did. That Rivermark boy.
I just proved he was innocent.
Yet you proved a constable was wrong, in public. Not many folk would do that. Vegetables aren't much, but it's what I've got.
Yes, I took the bag, nodded my thanks, moved on. The mathematics of social capital. I'd expended effort proving Felix innocent. Now I was receiving payment in the form of goodwill and extra vegetables. The equation balanced, even if the currency was different than expected. Prudence Oatcake pressed an extra roll into my hand with a wink.
Don't argue, just take it. That boy moved 6 crates for me, and you're the reason he's not sitting in a cell right now.
At the cheese stall, the vendor, a taciturn fellow named Horace who rarely spoke more than necessary, gave me full weight plus a sliver extra. Didn't say anything, just did it. No one made a speech. No one gathered a crowd to thank me publicly. That wasn't how the Burrows worked. But prices were fair, portions generous. Small kindnesses from folk who'd noticed what I did and wanted to acknowledge it in their own quiet way. I walked home with more food than I'd paid for, thinking about what it meant. 30 silver pennies would have been useful. Would have paid for mill repairs, covered expenses, given me a cushion against hard times. But this, the nods, the extra vegetables, the roll slipped into my bag. This meant something different. Not transaction, but recognition. Not payment, but respect. Respect could be converted into opportunities. Opportunities could be converted into stability. Stability could be converted into profit. The equation balanced. Just required patience to see how. The mill wheel turned when I arrived, water flowing steady over the paddles. I stored my purchases, checked the grain levels, updated the ledger with the morning's work. 32 sacks in storage, numbers that balanced, work that made sense. I thought about Barnaby's incompetence, about how easy it was to destroy someone with assumptions and authority. About the vendors who'd known Felix was innocent, but stayed silent because they feared making trouble. Someone had to check before accusing. Someone had to speak up when the truth mattered. Not because it was morally correct. That was the language of hearts and feelings, unreliable as summer rain. But because systems broke down when incompetence went unchecked. Because false accusations damaged the machinery of society. Because precision mattered. Apparently, that someone was me. I didn't know what to do with that realization. Didn't know if I wanted the role or just stumbled into it. But the market vendors had noticed. They'd remember. And maybe next time someone needed help proving their innocence, they'd know where to come. The wheel turned, water flowed, grain waited to be ground. I picked up my scoop and got back to work. But later that evening, I sat in the mill office, updating accounts by lamplight. The day's purchases were stored. The ledger showed modest progress, enough work to cover expenses, a few coppers left over. Not prosperity, but stability. I thought about Felix Riverrun, back in Rivermark now, probably telling his uncle exaggerated stories about his wrongful arrest and dramatic rescue. Young folk did that, turned every experience into an adventure. I thought about Marcus Deepbrook's card, tucked between ledger pages. A connection to power and resources I'd never had before. Potentially useful if the variables aligned correctly. I thought about Barnaby Thistledown, nursing his wounded pride somewhere in the Burrows. A fool with authority and a grudge and family connections. Dangerous combination, worth monitoring. And I thought about the market, the nods, the extra vegetables, the way folk looked at me differently now. The miller who proved an innocent man's case, the one who stood up to a constable, the one who didn't take payment. They'd built a narrative around what I'd done, made it about courage or justice or moral principle. They were wrong. I'd simply corrected an error because the evidence demanded it, because imprecision offended me, because systems functioned better when fools didn't grind innocent people into dust. But let them think what they wanted. Their narrative had value, even if the reasoning was flawed. I closed the ledger and extinguished the lamp. Tomorrow there would be more grain to grind, more customers to serve, more numbers to track. Tonight I'd sleep well. Some days that was enough. And the water kept flowing past the mill, steady and constant, the sound I'd known since childhood. The wheel would turn again tomorrow, same as always. But I'd learned something this week, something about incompetent authority and silent witnesses and the cost of speaking up. Incompetent constables were more dangerous than criminals. At least criminals knew they were doing wrong. Barnaby thought he was doing right, which made him unpredictable, impossible to reason with. Like a cracked millstone that might hold for years or shatter tomorrow, you never knew which. I'd remember that, and apparently so would the market vendors. Small comfort, maybe, but real. The water flowed. The mill stood quiet. Tomorrow the wheel would turn.